Hello there. It feels good to be back for Season 2 of Europe Talks Solidarity. I am Diogo Pires, your host, and I'm happy to continue this journey exploring what solidarity means in Europe today. There is so much yet to discover and discuss about solidarity. Can you remember Season 1 of this podcast? After a long and very enriching tour visiting guests in different European countries, we ended up crossing the Atlantic Ocean. We expanded our horizon and talked with Querechu in Brazil about solidarity beyond Europe and beyond the human species. For this new season, we have news. For several episodes, we will bring 2 or more guests to shed light on a solidarity-related topic from different perspectives. In this first episode, we will talk to Tommy Lighthieu, who currently lives in Baltimore, USA, and to Chloe Bonjean, who is based in Paris, France. Tommy was part of the Europe Talks Solidarity Conference organized in early 2022 in Helsinki by SALTO European Solidarity Corps Research Center. His presentation's focus was cities and public spaces as places where solidarity should and can be encouraged. He talks about shared experiences between inhabitants of the city of Helsinki. That's where his work connects to Chloe's. She is a communication and public relations officer for a theater called La Poudrerie. It's a theater without a venue. But before she tells us this story herself, let's first meet Tommy, shall we? Hi, Tommy. Thank you for welcoming us here. Can you say a little bit about yourself?
My name is Tommy Lighthieu. I work at the moment at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, in Maryland, as the Bloomberg Public Innovation Fellow. I'm on a 2-year leave of absence from the city of Helsinki, where I acted as the executive director for culture and leisure.
Tommy explains to me that the Division of Culture and Leisure of Helsinki takes care of making sure the city's inhabitants have meaningful and joyful experiences in the city and combines the area's youth work, the public library system, sports services, the Philharmonic, and city museums. Tommy, how would you describe yourself to the listeners?
I would describe myself as middle-aged, curious, physically somewhat healthy gay man living in a new country and a new city for 7 months now.
Tommy moved to Baltimore some months ago and tells me that as Bloomberg Public Innovation Fellow, his job is to reflect on what makes a city good for its inhabitants.
My research focuses very much at the moment on how cities build partnerships around parks and public libraries as this kind of civic infrastructure that allows social capital to develop in a city, that are these meeting places or these places of shared existence for people.
Shared and solidary spaces in European cities. Now that's getting me excited. But before we dive deeper into the topic, I really want you to meet our other guest, Chloe Bonjean. Hi, Chloe, and thank you for being part of this conversation. To get to know you a bit, can you tell us what makes you who you are?
Well, I think I'm a sensitive but strong person, or strong but sensitive, like kind of a combination of both, I guess. I think I'm quite fun and intelligent, but the most important thing, I think, is that I have strong values. I'm a feminist, and I think I'm really dedicated to my beliefs. I think art and culture are essentials because it's a way of understanding the world.
Chloe is 33. She's been working as a communication and public relations officer with La Poudrerie for 8 years. And as I told you before, this theater has something special.
We are a theater without a venue. We are based in Sevran, and we are specialized in participatory creation. That means that every work we do, every creations we do, involve the participation of the inhabitants of Sevran and the cities around.
Tell us about Sevran. What makes it an interesting city to work in?
Well, it's a city close to Paris. It's part of what we call Le Grand Paris. It's like the large suburb of Paris. In France, we call this kind of city like a world city because there are more than 100 nationalities in the city.
Sevran is a city of 51,000 inhabitants.
Half of them are kids, and there is a high level of unemployment. It's not a rich city. And there is no theater in this city. All of the cities around Sevran have theaters, have movie theaters, and Sevran does not.
And the fact that La Poterie doesn't have a venue.
It's a force, and it's sometimes a problem. It's a force in a way that it obliges us to work everywhere. We work in the whole city, and we try to create bonds, bridges between the different neighborhoods. We actually manage to mix people from different neighborhoods.
That's exactly why we wanted to hear from you about what makes a city solidary. But Chloe, before we continue, there's one thing I'm so curious to know, and I'm sure our listeners are too. How does a theater without a venue work?
Okay, so as I said, we are specialized in participatory creation. Today we have 3 types, I think, of creation, what we call the small ones, because it's small forms which are performed in people's home, so shows at people's home. What we call big forms, creations on stage, and the transversal creations. It's like new forms. It can be all sorts of stuff. I'm going to get back to that later. So that's what we do today. We have 4 creations per year at people's home, like 120 performances. All of the creation are issued by the same process of interview. We invite artists to meet people, interview them, and then write from their stories. Pretty much everything that we do comes in 3 parts. The first part is the artistic part. Then the second part is the discussion part. And the third part is the buffet and sociality part. It's all the same level of importance. And I think by creating something, the artistic part, then talking about it, and then sharing a nice moment, it allows everyone to really meet, know each other, and be in society. Maybe I could just add one thing. The shows at people's home are free. People do not pay for it because we have the finances to do that.
As the public relations officer, Chloe's job is, on one hand, to find hosts, citizens of Sevran, who would be interested in hosting a performance and inviting guests.
They are in charge of the whole organization. They can choose among 4 plays, and they invite whoever they want. They invite their family, but also their neighbors, their friends, their co-workers. It's free for everyone.
And on the other hand, Chloe connects the artistic teams invited in residency to create a show with inhabitants.
We have artists coming and they say, yeah, we would like to meet, we would like to meet fathers. So, yeah, I'm looking for fathers among the people I've met at other people's home, in other projects, etc.
That sounds like an incredibly participatory process. What are the reactions you are usually getting from the audience?
It resonates strongly with the inhabitants when they see the plays, because sometimes it's their actual stories on stage. And it's important because it's not that common in theater in France, I think, to have that much inclusion and diversity on stage. I think that's what I call creating culture together.
Today, I'm learning a lot about the importance of participation in creating solidarity spaces. Tommy shared the story of a similar approach he put in place when he was the youth director of the city of Helsinki. He took time to visit all youth clubs and to listen to the discourse around young people and noticed social workers, educators, and the police were only talking about young people as if they were problems.
And we started this exercise at the department. We had 350 employees that we agreed that we would all spend a day going into a neighborhood where we don't work and talking to young people about how their life is at the moment and how their neighborhood is at the moment. And then we interviewed over 1,000 young people in different neighborhoods with different backgrounds, and then did these kind of analysis workshops with the staff on what young people actually say, and tried to kind of craft our language to be closer to how young people talk about their lives. So we went from using all these fancy words like segregation and social cohesion and social capital to trying to use language that we can use both with decision makers, but also with young people. And we went from this kind of fairly complex language into saying that our job is to make sure that Helsinki is a nice city for young people. And a nice city for young people means that young people have friends, they have things to do, and they feel like they matter to other people. That was what we worked on. And daring to use words like friends, like fun, is not typical in government. We need to use like big words to seem important. And I think sometimes it would be a lot smarter to use simple language. And it really kind of brought this question of joy much more into our work and a more positive narrative about talking about people.
Narrative. I'm just pausing here to take note of this word. It connects back with what we heard in Season 1 about living together with others, no matter what differences we are talking about. Narrative also brings me to what Tommy shared about bringing different departments together in the Division of Culture and Leisure of Helsinki.
And then when I was elected to the role of executive director, we talked a lot about with the staff, what's really the combining thing between sports and culture and youth and libraries? Like, do we really have anything in common? And I think we quite quickly concluded that the staff was really motivated in building a fair and equal city for everyone. So we kind of built the values around that. The idea was we would have a joint value base that starts from people's right for self-determination, commitment to solidarity and joy and these kind of things, but then giving a lot of agency to the level of the services to decide what actually happens at a library or what kind of concerts do we do. Not trying to manage it from the top, but then making sure that certain systems were shared, like how we approach diversity and equity, how we approach safety, how do we design services.
With both Tommy's and Chloe's background stories in mind, let's zoom out a bit and explore how their work is related to solidarity. Tommy, I am curious about one thing. In your research on public services and on building better cities for people, do you often encounter or use the word solidarity?
To be honest, solidarity is not really a word that I use on a regular basis. But the notion of solidarity is quite familiar to me, starting from the fact that I've grown up in a Nordic welfare state and worked for one of the public institutions of a Nordic welfare state. Coming from Finland, I guess the notion of solidarity as in it's smart for us to share resources with other people and to make sure that everyone has the capabilities for a decent life is quite ingrained in me. It's part of the culture that I was brought up in. My work is really around the way that we can create those experiences of solidarity, those experiences that make us believe that it's actually quite smart and it's also in our self-interest to ensure that everyone has reasonable capabilities for a life with dignity and without shame. I think for the last decade, my thinking around this subject has been very much directed by this notion of capabilities, which is this theoretical framework developed by the Indian philosopher Amartya Sen and an American philosopher Martha Nussbaum, where the idea is that it's the responsibility of the society to ensure that everyone has capabilities to craft a life they have reason to value.
You might already know about the next question from the first season of the podcast. We asked all our guests to give us their definition of solidarity. What is yours, Chloe?
To me, solidarity is not about gestures. Like, it's not about, I don't know, give money to a homeless man or woman. I don't say it's not solidarity. It's not, for me, sustainable solidarity, because you can give money to a homeless man and you can go to Senegal and build a school for kids, but you can do that and still be self-centered. And for me, sustainable solidarity, it's about decenter yourself, try someone else's glasses, and then look at the facts, one thing, history, one stuff, I don't know, whatever, and try to understand the other point of view. When you do that, when you understand that your truth is not everyone's truth, there are as many truths as people, well, solidarity begins, because you realize our interdependencies with other humans, other countries, and even nature. And then you realize that we have to be in solidarity.
Yes, this interdependence reminds me of my conversation with Kerechu. And what about you, Tommy? What is your definition of solidarity?
I am a social scientist by education, and I know that one of the things that social scientists often do is that they destroy the mood in all kinds of workshops and group engagements by asking for definitions. I don't know if I have a very clear or fixed idea what solidarity means. I think for me, it means it's an active state. It's not a mindset. It's more the acts we take as a collective or as an individual to make things easier and fairer. I think my definition of solidarity is taking action to make life fairer and the distribution of resources fair. Having said that, I've been lately thinking a lot about this notion of conviviality, as in what are the actions that we take where we negotiate sharing space with other people, and kind of how do we live with difference. And I sometimes think that a lot of our imagination around solidarity or democracy or community is sort of biased to this idea of consensus. And I think that especially when we live in a more diverse world, maybe starting from recognizing friction and to some extent conflict of interest as our starting point for designing our systems would get us into a better place.
Conviviality, in the sense Tommy is using the word, implies we acknowledge differences and that we are able to listen to all opinions around the table without forcefully looking for a consensus. Different views should, in his opinion, coexist, be heard, and understood without generating hostility or violence. Conviviality then becomes a tool towards more solidarity in cities. It reminds me of something Chloe talks about regarding her work. As she described, after the theater shows they organize in people's homes, there's a discussion about the theater piece while people eat the food the audience brought along. Chloe explains that this part of the approach deserves special attention.
The discussion part is really important because in the shows we are talking about social issues, family, work, violence, sexism, racism. The plays are about all that kind of issues. So it's really important to share and talk after. It creates small spaces where everyone is on an equal foot. Well, we tried because I don't know if it's real, but I really think so, because we are not here to tell people what they have to think, but we are here to ask questions. And if we don't have those small spaces to ask ourselves questions and trying together to answer it, well, you can't do that in front of 200 people. You can't do that.
Chloe recalls a theater piece that, instead of talking about Islamic radicalization, talks about the pain of a mother left behind by a son that went to Syria to fight.
And people were really moved by this play because they never thought about the mothers. They never thought about the pain that could cause. And that's why the discussion part is so important, because it's a place where we can talk about all of this stuff. And the food part, is really important too. First, I said people didn't pay, and it's a way for them to show gratitude by bringing a dish they made. And it's the moment when we all can discuss all kind of stuff, learn about people's life, their hobbies. This moment, there is no actor from Paris, La Poudrerie employee, inhabitants of Sevran. We are all a bunch of people who have never met in another place without the play. But we are here, we talk to each other, we really meet each other. And that's the beauty of it, I think.
I think we would probably create fairer and smarter ways of engaging and making decisions if we would start from the notion of friction and then thinking of what are the systems and behaviors we have to have in place to negotiate that difference, recognize that difference and friction, and ensuring that that friction doesn't escalate into hostility or violence. I sometimes think that this bias towards consensus-oriented thinking leads to practices where we intentionally, unintentionally suppress minority voices. We push people out of the room if they don't agree with us. And it leads too easily to this kind of diluted result, rather than recognizing that these are the issues where we agree on. These are the issues where there seems to be tension, and now we have to make a decision. Let's ensure that everyone's been fairly heard, and we ensure that we understand each other, even if we don't agree. And let's make sure that we have a way to make decisions on resources, on sharing space, on behavior or legislation that is predictable, fair, and equitable, but takes into account that there are certain views that cannot be kind of unified through just endless conversation.
Even though they are talking from different places, both Chloe and Tommy told me about the importance of civil society in ensuring a democratic system and in fostering layers of solidarity both in France and in Finland.
We can't just wait for politics to change. And honestly, changes never came from the top. I think we need to empower ourselves to experiment and know what we can do at our own level. And I think it's the only way to keep a little hope.
Chloe and Tommy, what do you think creates a sense of home for inhabitants of Helsinki, for inhabitants of Sevran, for inhabitants of Europe, if I may say?
Well, I think actually solidarity is one of the things that creates a sense of home. Almost every time artists come to Sevran for the residencies, etc., they meet, interview the inhabitants, and they realize that they are really attached to their city. They are really proud of it. They want to defend it. I think people themselves create this sense of home and citizenship.
I think a sense of home in a city requires at least 3 layers. The first layer is that you have a private space that belongs to you. The second layer is that you need a number, it doesn't have to be a big number, of strong ties to other people who are in your life because of who you are. And then the third layer of a sense of home is that you are accepted into the public space as a user of that public space. And there I come to this notion of conviviality, as in, how do we negotiate our differences in the public space? How do we make room for other people? How do we claim space for ourselves? How we take other people into account when we meet our basic needs or have fun or move around the city.
Wow. Conviviality. Sharing different points of view over a shared meal, arts, books, and so much more help a city become a place of solidarity. Thank you very much, Chloe and Tommy, for shedding light on those parts of cities that allow citizens to show solidarity to one another. Thank you for your time and great contributions.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. By the way, did you know that 2022 is the European Year of Youth? This is why, for this season, we have decided to invite as much as possible young people to this podcast to showcase the importance of European youth to build solidarity into our societies. So make sure to join us for the upcoming episodes with young voices from different corners of Europe. This is a podcast of SALTO European Solidarity Corps Research Center, produced by Instituto NOW. For more information and resources on solidarity and the course, go to talkingsolidarity.eu. The theme song Solidarity Unifies Us is composed and sung by Paula Gehrs. The episode was mixed by Bruno Freire and hosted by Diogo Pires. The artwork was created by Ina Gouveia. Did you like this episode? If yes, please give us 5 stars on your podcast app and share it with the people you think should listen to it.
Our love to share.